All right. This is going to be an interesting episode. So, out of inspiration from my friend Davud, he told me that he was picking up the Quran again. And, I decided to pick up the Bible again. And another line of inspiration would be that Rilke, the Bible for Rilke was a book that he always had with him. So it's interesting to think, such a famous poet of the 20th century always carried around the Bible with him. But anyways, for my own self, I decided to read the book of Job, and I've decided to approach this in several ways. One, I was trying to think about this symbolically, and then I was also trying to think about this story in terms of, what can we take away from this story, um, without having any theological attachments, right? Just, what can somebody, let's say if someone doesn't believe in God, what could they still take from this story that is still beneficial, that could be helpful. So I'll just kind of give you, for those that are not entirely familiar or kind of want to recap with, about the story, the book of Job, which is, just the story of Job. The recap is that Job is a man that has, he's thriving, right? He's got tons of sons and daughters. He's got, servants. He's got livestock. The man's thriving, and then the story begins with God and Satan having a conversation, and God is saying, have you seen my servant Job? Like, he's such a God-fearing man, and so on. And Satan's like, yeah, I mean, but you haven't really, like, Satan's kind of like, oh, well, he's a God-fearing man, but like, you haven't really tested that fear, he's a God-fearing man for what? uh, and then so Satan says, let me do something to Job, and we'll see. Basically, he actually tells God first. He says, strike your hand on everything that he has, and we'll see if he's still God fearing and wanting to serve you. And God tells Satan, he said, okay, take everything away from Job, and he will still be God fearing and my servant, right? But it's funny. So Satan takes everything away from Job, right? Children, livestock, basically, like, so many people and things and possessions just gone, taken away, either killed or stolen, whatever they may be. And Job is still holding strong. He's holding strong. And then again, it resumes to Satan and God having another conversation. God's like, "See, I told you, like, he's still my God fearing servant." And Satan's like, "Oh, okay, well, let's actually afflict him with some physical. Let's go flesh for flesh, right? Go deeper than bone here." And then God says, "Okay, as long as you don't kill him, he's yours. Do what you want. As long as you don't kill him. You cannot kill Job, but you can do whatever. So then this is when Job gets afflicted with the physical pains, the like I mean, it's crazy. He's getting like pustules and all this stuff and boils and everything. And now Job is he's feeling it, right? He's feeling it. And to kind of fast forward a little bit, eventually his companions come to, you know, they're supposed to comfort him, but what ends up happening is that Job starts going on this big rant about, you know, he's like, I don't understand. He's like, first, like, he curses his birth, he wishes, death would just take him and all this other stuff. He doesn't understand why. He doesn't understand what he did. He feels like there's been some kind of injustice against him. And so Job wants to make his case against God, and because he feels that he hasn't done anything wrong. He's been such a righteous man. And what's interesting about this is that, well, I mean, Job. Okay, so from Job's perspective, we don't really know that, right? People are like, okay, yeah, righteous, whatever, Job. But because we know that interaction between Satan and God, we technically know that Job is actually telling the truth, right? That he has not done anything wrong. So he's not lying about that. He hasn't done anything wrong. Uh, but there's a couple mistakes that Job makes. But to kind of go on with his three companions, each of them basically throughout the book, each of them take turns basically blaming Job or trying to find some fault with Job. They're saying like, well, God only punishes the wicked, so you must have done something wrong, Job. You must have did something. Whatever kind of righteous man you're talking about, like, you're probably lying, like, or your errors have finally caught up with you. You did something because God only punishes the wicked, right? And it's funny because hearing this over again, it almost sounds like a very modern Christian thing to say. Well, I'm not gonna say for all Christians, but some of the ones that kind of just take it so black and white. Like if someone's going through a hard time, like, oh well, that's probably your sins catching up to you. Better pray for forgiveness. But what's interesting about this whole so Job is trying to make, so he's debating with his, so just to continue on, Job is debating with his companions. He's like, look, I know I didn't do anything wrong. He's like, I can prove to you I didn't do anything wrong. And here it's funny because Job starts throwing arguments at them saying, look, there's evil people that never got punished. There's been people that did wrong and they live safe in their homes, and they die old without any like problems. They have children, and they survive disasters and all this stuff. And he's like, yeah. So he's like, I don't. So he's making his case and saying, look, even if you say that God punishes the wicked, look, he's like, look at this. Look at all the wicked people that kind of basically don't get punished until later on, or maybe till after they die or something like that. And again, a lot of the back and forth with his companions is They are using their knowledge of God about trying to assert that, well, Job did something. Job, you know, because God wouldn't punish Job for no reason, you know, right? Because he did something. And so hopefully you guys are starting to see like where the companions and Job's mistake are starting to come a little bit clear. But it becomes absolutely clear with one of the younger men that were sort of listening to the companions, and I really like the first couple lines that open up with this kid, because he starts off by saying, he's like, I am young and you guys are old, and so I respected that, right? And basically he says, the kid says, but age alone doesn't make one wise. And I thought that was always so funny the way he said it. But anyways, the kid is, well, I want to say either a kid or like a young man. So I'm going to say like a very young man. He gets very angry with Job and all his companions. And he says, look, you guys, like, one, you guys didn't even give like a good argument against Job. And so he's mad at the companions and he's mad at Job. He's mad at all four of them. And there's a specific verse where he says, actually, I'll just read like the first like 2 or like 12 through 14 here. He says, I paid close attention to you, but none of you could prove Job wrong or answer his argument. So do not say we have found wisdom. It is God who refutes him, not a man. Actually, I really liked what this young kid said to Job's companions and Job in response, because they're all arguing, trying to refute Job. And Job is trying to basically make a case against God, saying like, look, he's like, I've done everything right. I don't understand why I'm getting punished. Like, I feel like there's been some type of injustice done against me. And the young kid basically responds to all of them in this one particular verse by saying, it's God who refutes him, not a man. Which, I don't know, there's lots to think about with that one. But so we fast forward, the young man goes on a big like tangent, basically telling his companions, well, Job's companions and Job, how they don't have any understanding, basically. Like, how would you know, right? They're all claiming all these assertions, and they really don't know, right? You can't claim to understand what you know about God. And finally, God kind of cuts in after the kid goes on like a big tangent, basically. And God goes and he says, should a fault finder contend with the Almighty, right? A fault finder. Now, this particular line, the fault finder, actually, I found it really funny, fault finder, where Job is finding a fault with God, and then his companions are finding a fault with Job. But here's the thing about the fault finding, is that they're both saying that they know, like in absolutes, that, well, Job, the way you are is because you must be wicked, because God only punishes the wicked. So you must have done something, right? But because we know from the beginning of the story, it was Satan's kind of like test, right? And God agreed. He's like, okay, take Job's stuff away, afflict him with illness. Technically Job didn't do anything wrong. So he's not wicked, right? But where Job messes up is where he starts finding fault with God for this, right? So it's funny because the companions and Job make the same mistake. They both try to find faults. Uh, Now, what I like about this particular story is that I can look at is is that I thought about friendship. I thought about friendship and how dismissive we can be when trying to understand our friend's situation. You know, and I've and I hate to say this, but I have some friends that do this actually, and I have seen this happen to other people where an event happens in somebody's life, and the person's upset or they're sad or something, and whoever is trying to comfort them says, well, this probably happened because you did this, that it's because you did whatever you did, that's why that happened, you know uh, and what takes me back to the beginning of the verses in Job is that even though Job is angry at God, his companions, Job is saying, look, I'm angry at God and everything is taken away from me. And he says, and all you guys can do is just call me wicked, right? And he's like, could you at least give me some mercy? Um, and I think there's even a verse there too where Job says, even if I did error, it's between me and God, right? And so there is a lot to reflect there about when you have a family member or a friend going through something and thinking about, well, I'm gonna for some reason I'm gonna pick this time to point out their errors, you know. And I just I don't think I'm not let me put it this way, I'm not completely against somebody being like, okay, like maybe you did this and that's why this happened, but to be in the presence of somebody that's kind of frustrated or sad or angry or mourning, whatever that may be, it's typically not the time for you to say something like, well, maybe if you just didn't have do this, you wouldn't be in this situation right now. You know, uh, I don't think anybody ever wants to hear that. Nobody ever wants to hear that. Um, if you really feel like you want to say it, then I would suggest saying it when the person is not frustrated, not angry, not whatever. Because right now Job is just upset, right? He's frustrated. Everything's been taken away from him. He's sick. He's in pain. The last thing I would want to be called is wicked, right? Right? Like that's the last thing I would want to be called with all this going on. Uh, so I feel like it does teach you some kind of like etiquette for friendship, or just etiquette for people going through things. I think I think there's even a verse, I'd have to find it again, where Job says, well, why can't you guys just stay silent? you know, uh, I think there's even a verse in there somewhere too about that. But anyways, yeah, it goes back and forth. Goes back and forth. Um, Now, symbolically, I think Job's questions in the beginning are very symbolic of mankind in general. Very, very strong existential questions that are still valid and they're still asked till this very day. Job cursing the day he was born, Job kind of not understanding why these things are happening to him. I mean, this is kind of like what we all go through, when things happen to us, like, I don't know, why is this happening to me? I don't know, why is everything falling apart? And we sort of just don't want to live with the question, right? We want to know the answer right away. And Job is he's lost his patience, right? He doesn't want to be patient anymore and live with the question. He feels like something has been really done wrong against him. And I think this is important because this can fall into Nietzsche's man of resentment, right? Where things have happened to us, and no matter how, no matter how severe and everything is, that there's always potential to turn into somebody that is just pure resentful about life. Um, so we don't even have to make it about God here. We can make it to where all these ailments, all these sufferings, all these grievances are very symbolic of mankind in general, because mankind, it goes through suffering, right? We get sick, we lose people, we lose possessions, we grieve. I mean, everything that Job goes through existentially is basically what every other human has gone through to an extent, right? Lesser or fewer, lesser or higher degrees of it. Um, so I think there's much to learn just from Job's questioning and Job's anger and frustration and his helplessness about the what's happening in his life. Um, but it is like, to for me, when I think about Job, it helps me to become conscious about how easy it is to fall into becoming a man that's bitter and a man that's resentful about just everything that happens to him, right? And then just finding something to, finding some type of injustice, right? Something, life is unfair, right? You could take it like that. It doesn't even have to be about God, right? Because remember, we can always abstract the notion of God into just like reality, or whatever we want, for those people that are maybe like, kind of anti-religious, but there's always a way to make it fit the paradigm, so that way we can take something out of this. Um, so, but yeah, I mean, I feel like I want to say more about this, but I already said that, right? The fault finding. Um, but I also want to look at the fault finding in terms of how we have to be very careful about when we are seeing somebody or something happens to somebody, because I think it's very interesting that we shouldn't react so quickly as if we know or understand the situation, to where we could say, well, this is why this happened, this is why this occurred. We can really abstract this to, even politics, right? Something happens and we immediately want to find fault, right? We want to find fault with something, with life, or even with like, even if we have like partners, right? Just our love partners, they do something or something happens, and it really does show how man is so quick to find faults, that they want a reason. They want a reason. They want to know, right? They want to know so badly. And this, I feel like the story of Job is really, capitalizes that whole process. Really capitalizes that whole process of, you know, being a man that wants to know when you don't even understand the whole situation, right? We want to find fault so quickly, so fast. We want to react so quickly and so fast. That's why I really like the boy at the end, because the boy basically says, "Look, we gotta be, we gotta be humble here. We gotta be modest about what we're saying, about what we're claiming to know, because the reality is we don't know. we don't know the whole story. We don't have the whole picture. Um, and so again, I think this is uh, really humbling in terms of, when we talk politics, when we talk just anything. Um, when our friends are in trouble and want comfort, it's we should maybe give advice that just kind of like coming from just like, I think maybe you should do this, or maybe this is why it happened, but never so like, yes, this is why it happened because you did this and because you did this. It's a totally different interaction. That's a totally different interaction, in comparison to having a sort of modest approach, right? A sort of humbling approach to your understanding and to your knowledge. And it could be this, right? It could be that, but we don't really know. So I think this whole story is it's humbling for anybody that I would say it's really humbling for people that just want to really reside in that helplessness, right? That we can try to understand, but we should always acknowledge that in our very attempt to understand and explain to maybe our friends or to ourselves about what's going on, is that we always got to slip in that little footnote that says, maybe that's what it was. That's what it could have been. I don't really know. Um, and we also have to think about time, right? In terms of the concept of time is really important in this story as well, right? Because remember, Satan and God, they planned this, right? They planned this whole event. So that means there was a certain point to where God was going to be like, okay, look, Job is still being good to me, right? He's still God fearing and so on. So I'm going to stop it, right? Um, so we have to think in terms of time as well, and I think that's really important. And I think that's why it's critical to not be so quick to find fault, because maybe what is going on has not fully developed, right? It has not fully developed yet, in order for us to make an adequate assessment of what is going on, what's happening, and so on. So again, I think it's really rich. There's lots of things that you can nitpick here and learn from, but that's basically what I took out of it. Yeah, and I enjoyed it. I think I'm gonna try to go for the Gospels next, and just see what happens. But anyways, thank you guys for watching. All right, take care.